In the era of the Wild West, daily life included some hygiene practices that might seem peculiar or even alarming by today's standards. Here's a closer look at how people manage cleanliness in an era without the comforts we take for granted. Facial cleansing with natural waters. Women of the Wild West had to be resourceful. Without access to running water at home, they often used the fresh water from rivers and streams to wash their faces each morning. Privacy was scarce, and taking a full bath was a luxury reserved for rare occasions. The simple act of splashing river water on one's face was the primary means of maintaining facial cleanliness. The challenges of outhouses. The iconic image of the Wild West rarely includes the reality of outhouses, the predecessors to modern toilets. These were outdoor structures with a simple hole in the ground, often accompanied by a foul odor, insects, and a lack of toilet paper. Before toilet paper became common in the mid-19th century, people resorted to using leaves, corn cobs, or grass, leading to a less than sanitary experience. Whiskey, a substitute for meals. When picturing the Wild West, we might envision cowboys feasting on hearty meals by a campfire, but the reality was often starkly different. Pioneers' diets were quite simple, sometimes consisting solely of beans, and it wasn't unusual for whiskey to replace a meal. Health considerations often took a back seat, and even when nutritious food was available, Lysol as a misguided remedy. In a time when personal health issues were not openly discussed, Lysol, a product designed for household cleaning, was repurposed for personal hygiene. Women used it to address discomfort, including yeast infections and as a form of birth control. Unaware of the dangers posed by its harsh chemicals, it was a risky practice that took time for society to recognize and correct. Salon hygiene, a dicey affair. The saloons of the Wild West, where the infamous rot-gut liquor was served, harbored hidden health risks. The low-quality alcohol could leave patrons feeling ill. Additionally, communal towels at the bar, meant for patrons to dry off, were often riddled with bacteria and contributed to the unsanitary conditions. Communal bath water. Having a personal bathtub in the home was a rare privilege. The labor-intensive process of fetching, heating, and using water meant that most families went without. Even after affordable bathtubs became available through mail-order catalogs like Sears Roebuck and Company, they were still an expensive purchase. Families who did have tubs would bathe in succession using the same water to conserve resources, leading to the tradition of the Saturday night bath in preparation for Sunday church. In summary, life in the Wild West required ingenuity and tolerance for less than ideal hygiene standards. Despite the lack of modern conveniences, people found ways to maintain their cleanliness within the limitations of their environment, straw beds, and the insect dilemma. In the days of the Wild West, the concept of a bed was far from what we consider standard today. Imagine a makeshift mattress of straw or hay, laid directly on the floor without the luxury of a bed frame. While this may seem rudimentary now, for many, it was a significant step up from sleeping on the unforgiving ground. However, these straw beds came with their own set of challenges, as they were prone to becoming havens for bugs. Keeping these beds free of pests was an arduous task, with all manner of insects making themselves at home in the straw. The evolution of toilet paper. Personal sanitation in the Wild West had its own unique set of challenges, with toilet paper being a luxury that many went without for quite some time. Resourceful individuals made do with materials like corn cobs, torn pages from magazines, and catalogs. The introduction of medicated paper by Joseph Gayety in 1857 marked a turning point, although these were individual sheets rather than the rolls we're familiar with today. The roll-style toilet paper we use now didn't come into the picture until 1890, complete with its own dedicated holder. It wasn't until the 1920s that toilet paper became a common staple in American households. Bathrooms of the era were a far cry from today's standards, and certainly stretched the imagination with their unconventional approaches to personal care. The Wild West's astonishing remedies, from cocaine to aspirin. In the days when cleanliness was a privilege and disease ran rampant, pioneers of the Wild West turned to some remarkable treatments. For instance, cowboys suffering from a toothache wouldn't hesitate to use toothache drops containing cocaine. Such remedies were commonplace in the 1880s, offering pain relief and a temporary escape from dental distress. In an environment lacking clean water and proper waste management, these medicinal solutions were crucial for survival amidst the chaos. The realities of infrequent bathing. For pioneers and cowboys traversing the Wild West, regular showers were not merely a matter of preference, but one of practicality and prevailing health beliefs. Many held the notion that frequent bathing could open the body to disease by allowing germs easy access through the pores. The scarcity of clean water compounded this belief, leading to widespread avoidance of regular bathing. As a consequence, wearing the same clothing for days led to fungal infections and other hygiene-related issues as the dirt and sweat accumulated. The lack of clean water and sanitary cooking conditions compromised meal safety. The quest for clean water. Access to clean water for drinking and bathing was a luxury akin to a desert mirage for many in the Wild West. As America expanded westward in the 19th century, only established communities had any semblance of water infrastructure. Those venturing into the frontier were forced to forego these amenities. Showers, dental hygiene, and even a clean drink of water presented significant challenges. Rainwater collection was sometimes the only option for those seeking to quench their thirst or wash away the grime, making daily cleanliness an arduous task. The functional fashion of cowboy bandanas. In the untamed lands of the Wild West, the cowboy and cowgirl bandanas served a purpose beyond mere fashion. These colorful cloths were a practical necessity in an era of scarce water and rare baths. Bandanas acted as a barrier against the relentless dust, the scorching sun, and the ever-present grime. They were strategically worn around the neck or over the face to minimize exposure to germs and to somewhat mitigate the omnipresent odors that came with frontier life. Sanitation struggles and the rarity of proper bathrooms. While cities like New York saw the introduction of indoor plumbing as early as 1842, the Wild West was slow to adopt such conveniences. It wasn't until the 1920s that a mere 1% of homes across the United States had any form of indoor plumbing. For many rural homes out west, a hand pump represented the height of water technology. Bathrooms often resembled the modern-day porta potty, and with most homes lacking proper sanitation facilities, maintaining basic hygiene was a constant struggle. This led to unsanitary living conditions and the potential for health complications among the Western population. The untamed tresses of Western men. For the men of the Wild West, hair wasn't just a style statement, it was a testament to their adventures. Regular haircuts were a rarity, as they constantly moved from place to place, leaving little opportunity for grooming. Their lengthy, unkempt hair wasn't just a mark of their rugged lifestyle, it also hinted at the considerable time elapsed since their last proper wash. Unwashed and often matted, these wild manes were a vivid indicator of the challenging living conditions and personal hygiene practices of the time. The harsh reality of disease in the Wild West. In the Wild West, disease loomed as the greatest peril for pioneers, claiming the well-being of many. A staggering 9 out of 10 individuals succumbed to a host of illnesses such as dysentery, smallpox, measles, mumps, influenza, cholera, mountain fever, and scurvy. Cholera, notorious for its brutality, often proliferated through the tainted water supplies of the era, a common consequence of the substandard hygiene practices of the time. Wild West hygiene, navigating a not-so-clean existence. The Wild West was rife with secrets of survival, and cleanliness, or the lack thereof, played a significant part in the daily lives of its inhabitants. Bathing was infrequent, and fresh water for personal use was a luxury many couldn't afford. As a result, disease took a heavy toll on the population, with unsanitary conditions contributing to the spread of illness. The struggle to maintain even the most basic levels of hygiene is a stark reminder of the harsh realities faced by those who lived and journeyed through the Wild West. The constant threat of illness. The pioneers lived with the constant anxiety of falling ill or worse. With questionable hygiene and a lack of clean water, maintaining health was an arduous battle in the rugged wilderness that was the Wild West. Germs and the glitz of live shows. The 1800s saw the rise of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, an entertainment spectacle that, despite its glamour, had its share of less appealing realities. Sanitation was a challenge, and with no proper restroom facilities, performers and crew struggled to keep clean amidst their demanding schedules. The dusty arenas and packed campsites became hotbeds of infection, placing everyone at risk, from performers to spectators. The harsh soaps of the era. Soaps of the Wild West were crafted from basic, often harsh ingredients, reflecting the simplicity and roughness of the times. These soaps, while necessary for cleanliness, were a far cry from the gentle, refined products we know today. The simplicity of soap in the Wild West. In today's world, we're spoiled for choice with a plethora of soap options, a veritable paradise for those who like to keep clean in style. However, in the Wild West, things were much more straightforward. The soap of that era was a simple concoction of animal fat, lye, water, and occasionally herbs for a touch of fragrance and added benefits. It might seem odd to us now to think of washing with a product made from animal fat, but back in the day, that was the norm. The germ-filled gatherings at churches. The Old Mission Church in New Mexico stands as a testament to history and culture, yet it harbors stories of a less sanitized past. In those days, the church, frequented by many, lacked the necessary attention to cleanliness. Dust and dirt accumulated, creating an environment ripe for germs. While today we revere such historical sites for their legacy, it's important to acknowledge the struggles with hygiene that were a part of their history. The dangerous treatments for syphilis. Syphilis, a rampant epidemic of the era, was feared and for a time was combated with mercury. The use of mercury ointment, despite its horrific side effects such as ulcers, tooth loss, and kidney failure, was endured by patients for years under the belief it would cure the disease. Facing health issues in those times was a daunting and often harrowing experience. Wild West hair care regimens. Hair care in the Wild West was leagues away from modern practices. Forget about luxurious shampoos. People used what was available, lard and lye soap bars. It was a no-nonsense approach to cleanliness. Some even concocted a hair treatment from whiskey and castor oil, an unconventional hair care cocktail by today's standards. And for styling, women of the era would use pencils to roll their hair into curls, showcasing both inventiveness and resourcefulness in their grooming routines. Barbers, the grooming gurus of the Old West. Barbers in the Old West were the go-to sources for grooming advice. Think of them as the original lifestyle influencers. They offered guidance on more than just haircuts, advocating for personal cleanliness as a means for comfort and health. While not all their recommendations, like questionable lotions and powders, were beneficial, people respected their counsel, with even women seeking their beauty tips. The unseen reality of the Colorado River. Pre-Hoover Dam. The transformation wrought by the Hoover Dam is clearly evident in historical images of the Colorado River, which flowed untamed and murky before its construction. In its past state, the river was heavily polluted due to mining operations, industrial waste, and improper trash disposal, turning the waters into a cesspool of contaminants. This had dire consequences for people who relied on the river for drinking, washing, and irrigation, often leading to widespread illness due to the poor water quality. Oral hygiene, a rough and tumble affair. In those times, oral care was far from a priority. Toothbrushes were considered a luxury, and daily brushing wasn't a widespread habit. When dental issues like cavities or the need for extractions arose, the approach was anything but delicate. Barbers or blacksmiths often doubled as dentists, extracting teeth with whatever tools they had on hand. As for anesthesia, a swig of whiskey was about as sophisticated as it got for numbing the pain. The gritty side of cowboy life. Cowboys are often romanticized as rugged and stalwart figures, icons of the great outdoors, inseparable from their faithful steeds. While their bond with their horses might be the stuff of legend, the reality was far less glamorous. Cowboys, notorious for their infrequent bathing, treated their horses to a similar lack of grooming. As they traversed the expansive landscapes, cleanliness fell by the wayside. And it wasn't just dirt they carried with them. Upon arriving in town, they were often accompanied by a potent aroma that announced their presence long before they were seen. The pervasive threat of germs in the Old West. Consider the brave settlers and adventurers who embarked on monumental quests across the Wild West. Unbeknownst to them, they were also unwitting carriers of germs, transporting bacteria and viruses across the uncharted territories. Their interactions with new communities facilitated the spread of infectious diseases. With limited medical knowledge and a lack of sanitary practices, illnesses such as influenza, measles, and tuberculosis ran rampant, wreaking havoc throughout the frontier. The neglect of hygiene and sanitation only compounded the problem, turning the quest for westward expansion into a perilous journey fraught with invisible dangers. Chewing tobacco, a necessity-turned nuisance in the Old West. In the rugged environment of the Wild West, chewing tobacco was more than a vice. It served a practical purpose. The dusty, dry conditions of the open fields meant that keeping one's mouth moist was a constant challenge, and tobacco chewing provided some relief. However, this solution brought with it an unsavory side effect: excessive spitting. It became such a widespread issue that regulations had to be enacted. In the saloons where men frequently gathered, it was a common sight to see tobacco juice being expectorated onto the floors. While spittoons and cuspidors were provided in an attempt to contain the mess, they were hardly a perfect solution. Saloon owners even spread sawdust on the floors to absorb the spit, but this only served to create a hotbed for germs, contributing to the spread of diseases like pneumonia and tuberculosis. Those who spent the night in such establishments were effectively sleeping in the midst of these unsanitary conditions. Some towns and cities took the drastic step of outlawing spitting in public spaces such as train stations, enforcing the law with stiff penalties, including hefty fines and even imprisonment, all in an effort to curb this health hazard. The perilous reality of saloons and brothels. Saloons and brothels were centers of both allure and peril during the Wild West era. The women who worked there, while embodying the era's mix of desire and danger, often carried the additional risk of venereal diseases. Alarmingly, it's estimated that around half of the adult workers in these establishments were infected with such diseases. Treatments of the time were not only ineffective, but potentially harmful, with the use of mercury and boric acid exacerbating health issues. The rapid spread of infections among both entertainers and patrons was a grim reality, and the full extent of the situation is difficult to gauge, since historical death records frequently omitted the exact causes of death. The harsh truth is that maintaining good health was a rare privilege in the Old West, particularly for sex workers and their clients, for whom basic well-being was often out of reach. Alcohol as a dubious remedy. Alcohol was commonly touted as a cure-all for various ailments, a testament to the medical misconceptions of the time. It was a panacea in the public eye, despite its obvious lack of efficacy in treating most medical conditions. The reliance on alcohol as a treatment reflects the limited understanding and resources available for health care in the Wild West. Historical remedies. Alcohol as a makeshift medicine. In the bygone days of the Old West, medical professionals and pharmacies were scarce commodities, compelling people to improvise with their health care. Among the various peculiar concoctions and so-called magic potions touted for their curative powers, cleanliness was not a priority. Dusty attire and infrequent bathing were the norms, and amidst this lack of hygiene, alcohol was often employed as a makeshift sedative and supposed remedy for ailments. With genuine medical treatments hard to come by, a swig of spirits was frequently considered a viable method for treating sickness. Cleanliness. A gender divide in the Old West hygiene was a constant battle in the Wild West, especially given the scarcity of water, which made bathing a luxury rather than a routine. Interestingly, women emerged as the era's champions of cleanliness. Their domestic roles often kept them indoors, affording them more opportunities to use water for washing. Men, on the other hand, bore the brunt of outdoor labor, grappling with dust and grime with little chance for regular cleansing. Consequently, the typical male frontier dweller was likely to be far grimier than his female counterpart. Exploring the Wild West's hygiene habits. Join us as we delve into the untamed hygiene practices of the Wild West, a time when maintaining cleanliness was a formidable endeavor. This historical journey into the past reveals the innovative and often rudimentary ways people approached personal care during these challenging times. While the Wild West is long gone, the lessons it imparts remain valuable, reminding us of the importance of hygiene and health in our lives today. Thank you for joining us in uncovering these fascinating insights, and we look forward to sharing more historical explorations with you in our next video.